Shalom, shalom. Today I wanted to talk about a small enigmatic episode that happens in Parsha Tisa that really speaks to me, and I think would speak to any God-believing person in today's day and age. And this is when, after the sin of the golden calf, the Cheder Egel, Moshe is talking to God, and Moshe asks God, Hareini na kodecha, show me your glory, which people for the most part, understand is show me your ways, help me understand your ways. And this is not hard to understand if you think about what Moshe just has gone through. It's really difficult for him, who has the most clarity more than anybody else in having experienced God, who has such strong faith in God, who I think it's really hard for him is being the go-between, sometimes being an advocate for the people, sometimes being an advocate for God and trying to stand in between God and everything that he says and wants, and Moshe having a strong connection, and then being, the representative and, like I said, advocate for the people. And to be in between was really hard for him. And I think the fact that he experienced God on such a high level, everything was so clear for him, and to do anything that would um, diminish God's glory was far beyond anything that he could have ever done. And it was really, really tough for him when he saw the sin of the golden calf, to be an advocate for the people. I think it really hurt him, from the depths of everything that he knew and he believed. And I think what he was asking God was maybe something that had another side to it, is show me glories. God, how do you let this be? He pleads for the life of the people, but at the same time, and he knows God's going to forgive them and let them go on to fulfill the promise. But how, God, do you let in this world, God is so long suffering. He takes so much um, activity that is against everything that is God, that hears God's glory and greatness, and then people act in a way that's totally opposed, either just not believing him or acting in a way that shows it's no belief in any supreme being, no, against morals and ethics. And it's really, really hard for someone like Moshe with such a strong faith and connection with God to see that God lets these things exist. I think what he's saying is where is your glory? Why do you let these things happen? Why do you tolerate it? Just like Kavyachol, on a level of person to person, you really love a person, you really connected with everything, to someone who you love so much, and then you'll see somebody um, it highly insult them, and you don't want to tolerate it, and you will say to the person, where is your honor? Why do you tolerate that? But sometimes the person's a much bigger person and has a plan, and to have a knee-jerk reaction and just, shut them up is not always greater for the bigger picture. And I think God was trying to, he says to Moshe, you cannot see my face and live, because what he's saying is Moshe, you'll never understand the fullness of why I do what I do. No human being, no man can ever um, understand why I do what I do, when I do, how I do, and the fullness of what I do. If you did, you'd be God. But mankind has limited capacity, limited ability to understand. There's only one God, and you'll never understand the fullness of everything God does. That's beyond. But I can what God says, and I want to read it in English, but then we'll interpret some words in Hebrew because it's Hebrew words have dual meaning. But what God says is, you'll not be able to see my face, for no human can see my face and live. Hashem said, behold, there is a place near me. You may stand on the rock. And this is the pasuk that it's important to read, the words in Hebrew, because it says, Makom iti. Makom is also a name of God. And on the rock is on the Tzor. Tzor is also a name of Hashem, and the name of a thing. And I think the reason why God uses these two terminologies, we'll get to in a minute, but he says When my glory passes by, I shall place you in a cleft of the rock. I shall seal you with my hand, and until I have passed, then I will remove my hand, and you will see my back, but my face may not be seen. So I'd like to say how I understand this pasuk. So God uses the word makom because this word makom that we use as a place is also a name of God. And it's used in times where we don't understand, where we cannot see the presence of God. We cannot understand how God either allows for something to be. And that's why we use it when we are paying a visit to mourners. We say Hamakom Yinachem Etchem B'toch Sha'ar Avlei Tzion B'Yerushalayim. We use the name Hamakom for God because we cannot see, we cannot understand. We're in so much pain that sometimes we feel like God is not there in those moments of those great suffering. Because when you're suffering so great, when you feel the presence of God, you don't feel that much suffering. If you feel God there, that alleviates the pain. But when you have so much suffering you can't see, you can't understand, we use the name Hamakom. So this is something that Moshe's experiencing at that time, is when the Shekhinah has been pushed away. It's painful for him. There's a lacking. And so God purposely uses this Hamakom. There is a place. And he says, in the rock, where rock is the name we use for God when we say something we can trust, whether it's there, it's always there. It always exists. And it's rock solid, right? That's how we say rock solid. There's a cleft in there for you, for Moshe, who has a kind of faith in God as a rock, not wavering. And there's a place in there. And what God says is, I will shield you. And the word he uses with his kaf, with the palm of his hand. And I think the symbolism there is sometimes when people who have such strong faith in God and they live their whole life according to God's will, sometimes they can feel like they're being crushed by the hand of God, right? You feel like you're doing everything, but nothing's going right, or the world is topsy-turvy and you're trying so hard, but you're being crushed by that. I think a lot of times religious practicing people feel that way. But I think what God says is, you might feel you're crushed, but I am protecting you. And when it comes a time, when it is the right time that only God knows, he will release that, and we will be able to see traces of God from behind, either good things that came out of it, good things that happened on the way, some sort of purpose. We can get a glimpse, despite the fact that it's so painful and we cannot comprehend. We can see some of it from behind. And I think this is something that's really helps me in today's day and age, when there's so the lack of God in people's lives, and um, in terms of just how we proceed in society with all the evils in society. Um, and we're pushing the glory farther and farther away, and bad things are happening constantly. And people that are trying so hard and struggling, and we want to know why God doesn't interfere. Why does he let these things happen? I think what God's saying is, and as we say this in Hallel, right? Hashemayim Shemayim La Hashem Ha'aretz Natan L'Bnei Adam. What God's saying is, He created man. He put us on this earth for us to bring more of His glory. Meaning, He gave it to us to do good, to fight the battle, and to bring good and kavod and honor back here. He's not going to impose it on us. He wants it to be done from us. We can't just wait for Him to do something. So when we see things nowadays that are so bad, where the world seems to be getting so distorted, and bad things are happening all the time, what he's saying is, you know, you got to do yours, and bring back the glory. And while you're doing it, you might see traces of me uh, from a distance, from behind. But I think God will help us, but he wants us to take the first steps to bringing back his kavod, his honor, not to ask, where is your honor, but to do things to bring it back ourselves. Shabbat shalom.